Continuamos con el curso de las pláticas. Yo soy Alejandro Galvez, soy el presidente de la Asociación de Egresados de Sistemas Computacionales, en el cual le doy a continuación la bienvenida a Ike Jones, que es el consultor especialista en tecnología de NetCore, Azure y DevOps. Es un evangelista cuya meta es mejorar el ambiente laboral proponiendo prácticas de desarrollo empático que saque lo mejor de cada miembro del equipo. Él es creyente de la forma para mejorar como persona y a través de escuchar a los demás y reconocer el dolor propio. Brindemos un fuerte aplauso y adelante.
You want to? All right. So, hola, me llamo Napoleon Ike Jones. That is all the Spanish I know, but thanks to Sasha, she was able to get diction working, which looks like it's not working. So I hope you understand me, and we'll just wing it. So I'm coming here today to talk to you about empathetic DevOps and how we try to implement DevOps and Agile at one of the largest accounting and finance operations in the world that you would never heard of. So we can begin here. The land before time, waterfall. So what did we have? Monolithic applications. Source control? Source control back in the day? No. Who had source control in the 80s, 90s? No. 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, some people still don't have source control. Peer reviews? Nope. No peer reviews back then. Manual deployments. Then we came Agile. So Agile Manifesto was written. A bunch of white guys went into the mountains and had a conference and came up with the Agile Manifesto. Deliver early, deliver often, decrease the feedback loop, fail earlier so you know what's wrong with your application. So then we focus on delivering value. We don't want to build things that customers don't like. Continual improvement, so we push something out. We push out an MVP, get some customer feedback, see what they like, what they don't like, and improve on that. And we work in cross-functional teams. We have improved source control versioning. We were using Subversion. This was before the time of Git. And then, like I said, reduce the feedback loops between developers and the customer. But there was one problem with this. We forgot about IT ops. Like, we just completely left them. So what did we do? We had to go back and get them, right? So that's where DevOps comes along. So DevOps, improved communication and collaboration between the developers and IT operations. Improved CI/CD. We started automating the pipelines to deliver our applications into our environments, taking the human process out of it. Automated deployments. Sorry, I keep forgetting that I gotta point the clicker over here at the computer. Infrastructure as code and application performance monitoring. And we kind of made this shift away from projects more so to products, because projects end. Products generally don't end. So when a project runs out of funding, it's kind of like development stops on it, you just stop caring about it, but your customers and your user base, they still care about it. So switching to a product type of methodology allows you to keep going and going and going. So let me give you some background about how large of an operation this was where I was at. So we process over 135 million transactions per year. Manage over $1 trillion just in retirement and health benefits. We disperse $500 billion a year. We have about 12,000 employees. About 8,000 of them are actual employees, and the other 4,000 are contractors, so they don't really count as people. And then we had about roughly 2,000 IT employees, so fairly large. And we managed about 120 production systems. So this is going to be kind of the story of the agency's first large-scale Agile project. We had done some smaller ones, like really tiny ones that were like, the longest one of those was like maybe like 6 weeks. And they were like just really small things that we were pushing out just to get a feel for Agile. And then we said, hey, let's scale up. Let's do one of our biggest projects. So we decided to do it on a project that was responsible for reconciling accounts of about $200 billion a year. So this is going to be kind of like a timeline of how we were before. We were there at the land before time. That's where we kind of started at as an agency and how our processes worked. This is where Agile comes in. Now, this isn't us. This is just, I'm saying this is around 2001, Agile comes in. There we go. 2009, the first DevOps days. I guess I got to do it like this, so it's cool, whatever. Here we are today, DevOps Days, Guadalajara, 2020. And this is where we were after we finished implementing Agile on this project in 2017. We still weren't fully Agile, and I used to walk around and say it was a failure. Honestly, it wasn't a failure. It was a failure only in the sense that we didn't implement Agile fully. But when I show you the improvements we made, it's a success. So what happened was I ended up, after this project, I ended up going to some conferences and got to meet some really cool people, and I got the chance to see Donovan Brown speak. And if you've ever seen him speak, he's like the most enthusiastic person in the world. Like, he can get you to go run out and try and do anything after you hear him talk. So I heard him talk, and I was like, okay, we can stay the course with Agile, or we can improve. We can try and get better. So Matrix comes along, red pill, blue pill. I took the red pill, of course, because I wanted to do this, and I went on my merry way of my personal DevOps journey, trying to implement DevOps at this agency. So what did I start doing? Flow charting, creating value stream maps, analyzing multiple projects to get data from our Agile projects and also our projects that weren't Agile. So I collected as much data as possible, and here's some of the things I found. So our average day between a feature request and development starts was 27 business days. Average days between development and testing was 93 days. So we had no automated testing at this point. And it would take 93 days for the manual testers to come in and let you know if something's good or not. So in that time period, you lost a lot of context on the code you wrote. So here's the fun one. Average days between development and production, 187 business days. That's more than half a year in business days. So really it was more like a year when we factor in all the holidays. So another thing, we spent on average between $60,000 and $110,000 per month just for manual testing. Then, so this is after Agile implementation, 6 months to 2 years between feature request and development for our projects. And up to 6 years for new features to reach production prior to Agile. So we went from 6 years down to 6 months to 2 years. So, I mean, that's a huge turnaround. It's not Agile, so it's kind of considered a failure, but considering where we started at, it's not necessarily a failure. So The old way of doing things before Agile, and even still the Agile, it was still too slow, led to roughly 2,000 micro applications. So we had people that weren't in IT, weren't software developers, didn't have software engineering backgrounds. They were pretty much really smart analysts and accountants that would go and create these micro apps in Access, Excel, Word, and sometimes even FoxPro. But IT wouldn't know about them, so it just created this huge security risk for us. When a person left a job, he was the only person maintaining the FoxPro app. Nobody really knows FoxPro. No one ever told us about it, so we had to go through and start eliminating all of those. So after I learned all this, what did I do? I went around evangelizing DevOps, screaming at people, saying, hey, we need to implement this. We need to do better because it's costing us so much money. We're not innovating. Luckily, we were in a space where we didn't really have any competitors, so we weren't going to lose our customers, but the turnaround time was causing more things like security risks and just waste than anything, and developer unhappiness, customer unhappiness. So there was a huge problem with being satisfied across the agency. So I went and explained the data to everyone that I could, demoed new tools and methodology, started building a coalition, and I set out to implement DevOps, and the only reason this slide exists is to lead into the next slide, which is we failed at this epically. And by we, I mean pretty much me, because I was trying to implement DevOps at this organization. Pretty much, it was just me by myself and my coworker Adam, who was a few hundred miles away in another city. So what did I do? I quit. I said bye. It was like, this is impossible. Like, I can't do this anymore. It was a 2-year process of trying to do this, and it just wasn't working. And so I was just like, okay, now's not the time. I'm trying to move too fast in a place that's not ready to move this fast. So I said, I'm just going to alleviate myself of this stress and go somewhere else where they appreciate me and will love me for who I am. But no. So I left. I was able to help get some DevOps stuff off the ground, and a buddy of mine kind of took it over, and he has a DevOps initiative there that they're still trying to implement. And we talk pretty much every week, and it's usually just like me, hey, did you do DevOps yet? And they're like, no. So that's our weekly conversation. So in all of this, there's a lot of things that we learned. So I didn't want to say things that we've really, really sucked at. I want to say things that helped teach us. So one thing we weren't good at was a shared context. No one really knew what the other person was doing because we didn't have the tooling in place for that. All of our work items were managed on an Excel spreadsheet that was kind of passed back and forth between people. And as soon as someone sent it out, it was like immediately out of date. Or sometimes they just didn't send it out at all. So no shared context. No bidirectional communication all the way up and down the chain. So the people on the top would sometimes yell stuff down, and the people at the bottom that were implementing these things would yell stuff up, but it would never get all the way through. Scope management. We had a lot of scope creep in our projects, especially initially. Towards the end of the project, we started getting rid of that, but in the initial stages, there was a lot of scope creeps because everyone that was on the project was pretty much new to Agile and planning and doing sprint planning and things like that. We were doing project-based development, so we had this arbitrary end date that was given to us that was very inflexible for no reason. So what we ended up having to do was, for about 3 years straight, almost every developer worked between 20 and 30 hours of overtime a week. Yeah, we were dying. Like, everyone was pissed. It led to a lot of in-team fighting and a lot of really angry phone calls and people yelling at each other. Ended up getting really bad at some points. So one thing we really, really learned is, okay, we were able to implement Agile at this really tiny scale, but as soon as we tried to scale it out to something really big and more important, like all of our processes just started failing. And we sucked at testing. We didn't write unit tests. We didn't write integration tests, no functional testing. Everything was manual at that point. It was a nightmare because you would try to implement something and you didn't know 100% if it would work in production. Well, you never know 100%, but you didn't have really a great idea if it would work or not. And we would just kind of send it over to testing, and then it would just sit there for a month. And then when the testers picked it up, it would be there another month. They're testing it, and then we finally get the final report back, and it would be like, oh, these 35 items aren't what we expected. Do it over. Like, great, thanks. There's really useful information there, and it happened like 2 months ago, so I don't even know the code I wrote anymore. So the biggest problem that we had was culture, because we had the money to buy, we had enough money to buy any tool that we wanted, but getting the approval and convincing people that we needed this and convincing people that we needed to change was such a nightmare that we couldn't do it. So, things we did well. We did increase development velocity. I mean, we went from a 2 to 6 year time frame to a 1 to 2 year time frame. It's a pretty big increase. Incident response and management, we did really well with that. Managing the incidences and responding to them and working support. Problem is we could have avoided most of it if we had DevOps practices in place. We spent a week on call from like 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. every single day with Microsoft support, and because of the nature of where we were, we couldn't just get like the low-level support. We had to get like tier 1 critical, only can be like a US citizen with this special things. And so we blew about $150,000 in that week just because we were on the phone. And what it ended up being is one of our partners that handled the actual VMs, they were out in Utah, and they had fat-fingered the RAM setting. And so instead of 16 gigs, one of our servers was running at 1.6 gigs of RAM. And like anytime we would try to run the application and do anything with a fairly medium to small to medium sized data set, it would completely crash. Could have all been avoided if we were running infrastructure as code, but we weren't there yet. We did great with partner collaboration with our customers. Our support collaboration with Microsoft was awesome. And our collaboration with where our hosting was, it was okay. It wasn't terrible. They had a lot of turnover at one point. They basically let go of all their contractors and brought in like a whole new set of contractors. So like the contractors that were there didn't pass their knowledge and context down about the project. So that was an issue. But overall, the collaboration with partners was fairly good. We had excellent customer engagement. We worked one-on-one with a lot of our users, so I'd say that was a plus. There were a lot of them that we had to work with, but it was such specialized knowledge that we were building out that we had to. We did well with feature development when we started developing it and getting the development work done. Getting to start the feature, and then after it was done, and getting it into a testing environment, tested into production was where the problem was. So some of the things I noticed was we would run into when we were trying to implement these things, we would run into the same roadblocks every single time. It was either political, a process issue, or cultural. And cultural is definitely the most important one up there. So, politics. There we go. 2 at a time. Okay, so when you want to implement something at this scale, DevOps at a large agency, you got to have the political capital to do it, above and below you. You got to be able to convince your developers and engineering team, like, hey, this is going to be great. It's going to make your life so much easier. And you got to convince the people above you, hey, this is going to make you look like a genius. Everyone's going to love you. They're going to get feedback, and your projects are going to go great. Let's go back. Okay. We had to learn to frame the issue for the audience, and that was a problem on my side. Like, sometimes I would talk to, like, not the CIO, but like the senior management right below him, and I would frame the issue from a technical standpoint when I should have framed it more from, like, risk mitigation, cost mitigation, things like that, and just overall performance improvements. And then when you're talking to your developers and engineers, that's where you want to sell it as a technical bonus and a stress minimizer. Because no one wants to work 30 hours of overtime in a week. It doesn't matter how much you get paid. You can do it a week or two, but you're going to burn out real quick. Timing. One of the things that hit us was we were trying to do this, and we were going through a large audit at the time, so most of management was focused on the audit instead of improving the internal process. Like, we were trying to change internal processes during an audit when they're auditing our processes. It wasn't necessarily the best time to do it. So, if at all possible, go rogue. We couldn't, because there were so many controls and laws in place that we couldn't do this. But if you're in a work environment where you have a lot of control, just implement something. Find your pain point. Like, find what's bugging you the most. Generally, it's something like CI/CD, and just implement it and then move on to the next thing and keep implementing it, and then you'll have data to show everyone else, and then it has this snowball effect of, like, hey, did you see what Mike is doing over there? Oh, that's awesome. Can we do it over here? Yeah, sure. So another thing that happened, we had a lot of external gatekeeping from HR and just having multiple stakeholders on the project. So eliminate that wherever possible. So processes. Develop processes that empower teams. Customize the processes per teams. Not every process that you want to implement is going to work across all teams. So let teams have control and let them do what works for them. Automate wherever possible. Get rid of the mundane tasks. Let your developers focus on solving problems instead of doing repetitive, mundane tasks. Once again, eliminate gatekeeping in the processes. Now, culture. Focus on psychological safety. You got to focus on letting your people be who they are and having a safe place to work and present ideas that aren't inside of the normal box of ideas that you would generally have. Let them take risks. Promote empathy. Care about your employees, care about your coworkers, care about the people above you, below you, and your peers. Life-work balance. Now, a lot of people call this work-life balance, but honestly, life happens first. If you have a traumatic life event that's going on in your life, you're not going to be focused on work. If you're giving birth, like, no one's going to care about work. If you just had a heart attack or your father just passed away, work comes second, third, fourth. Life comes first. Trust. You have to have trust that your employees are going to do the right thing, and they also have to have trust that you're going to do the right thing. Trust is key. Embrace diversity. Diverse teams just make better products, period, because you have a diversity of thought. A lot of products are built by kind of like the same stereotype of developers, which is usually younger white males in their late 20s. So once you start bringing in a more diverse team, you have a lot better products because you have a lot of different viewpoints to work with. Define values and definitely make learning a priority. practice a culture of blamelessness. And this was a huge problem for us. And it was such a big problem that it's like still embedded in my brain today. Like when I mess up, I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna get fired. I need to sweep this under the rug. And then I'm like, wait, no. We're on a team that practices blamelessness. I can talk to anybody I need to about how to go about fixing the mistake I just made. Because let's be honest, we all make mistakes, and I'm pretty much wrong 90% of the time. So hire for culture, train for skill to an extent. Like I'm not saying just, hey, this person's great. They have great culture, they fit with the team well, but they don't have any of the skills we need. They've never developed anything, they're not an engineer. So you don't want to really bring that person on the team. But if it came down to someone having a great culture, being a great cultural fit, but their skills only match like 70, 80% of the time, you can train up the skills. It's fairly easy. Training up for the culture is very difficult. So this is one of my favorite quotes, and I wish the dictation would work, so it would translate over to Spanish. But it says, if I'm a senior leader and my team doesn't feel comfortable sharing risks, then I will never truly know reality. If your team isn't comfortable being honest with you, they're going to hide things from you, and you're never going to know exactly what's going on. And that includes the other engineers on the team, not just leadership. So, in essence, what I really learned was we need to build a culture of empathy. We need to enable compassion and understanding. We need to get a clicker that works. We need to allow people to embrace our differences, and we need to embrace their differences. We need to practice active listening. Don't just listen to reply to somebody, listen to understand what they're telling you. Avoid making assumptions about people because generally you're going to be wrong. And I mean, I do this all the time. I assume things and I really try to work on it. And it's very difficult to not do. And build positive personal relationships. It's a lot easier to have a working team when you're friends with them. I'm not saying you got to be best friends, or I'm just saying take an interest in your peers, your coworkers, your subordinates, and the people above you. Take an interest in things they like. Just be genuinely interested in them. So, DevOps never ends. I think you guys are blocking the signal. Okay, so you want to make small incremental changes. Find a pain point, fix it, and move on to the next. Keep iterating. Continue to learn and grow. Okay, so I was going to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the organizers, and thank you to all of you for attending and allowing me to come up here and speak. DevOps Days is my favorite conference because you can go up to anybody and talk to them. So I think I just made like 200 new friends. So look out for my Facebook requests. But like, I want you to give the organizers a round of applause, and the previous speakers and tomorrow's speakers, because you guys did a really awesome job.
Muchas gracias, Ike. Un fuerte aplauso. Gracias. Y por parte de los organizadores te vamos a dar un pequeño presente. Thank you.
Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Y en un minuto regresamos.